How is Sober Paddy here? I am on top of the Swiss Grand Hotel, beautiful Bondi stretching out behind us there, with international comedian Des Bishop to my left. And Des, you have a bit of a story, well, first of all, behind those sunglasses.
Well, yeah, these are not my sunglasses. These are the wonderful lady behind the camera's sunglasses. Yeah. They're a bit feminine, but it's quite glary today, which is nice because apparently it's heading towards the winter here.
Yeah, sure.
But as we speak, actually, it's getting hotter by the second, which is nice. But I wouldn't actually be able to deal with the sun in my face. So that's why I look kind of like a gay Bono right now. But anyway, here we are.
Yeah, that's it. Now, you and alcohol, Des, you're a teetotal, you don't drink anymore, is that correct? What's your story with it?
Well, I stopped 1995, July 16th, I stopped drinking. I started drinking like really young, like I was 12 when I started drinking.
Oh.
Wasn't meant to be me and alcohol. 14, I was already experiencing proper problems associated with like people who might have a problem with drink.
Yeah.
I would say alcoholic, I have no problem with the term.
Yeah.
By 17, would you believe, I'd gone to my first AA meeting, based on just, problems associated with drinking too much. And at 19, after sort of 2 years of trying to stop on my own, at 19, I properly stopped. I haven't drank since.
So what were the problems, man? Were you just like, getting, I don't know, tell me what they were.
Well, I don't say too much because, you can't trust everybody that listens to a story. You tell somebody else who used to drink too much and they get it and they understand, but some people are more judgmental. But just on a surface level, I would say I ended up in some blackout situations that were pretty chaotic. And when I say that, I mean, like in blackouts, I created ferocious chaos as opposed to kind of waking up on the side of the road and saying, oh my God, how did I get here? I would come out of blackouts in the middle of relatively violent situations and kind of wonder how I got there, but also having to deal with the fact that I most likely had started them.
Right.
And I was definitely a bit of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
I get you, yeah.
So that was one of the main things. But the other main problem was I just couldn't stop once I started. It was just
I hear you.
It would have to be no money or just people taking me home. There would have to be something that would stop me. I would just go until I was inebriated.
Yeah. So what made, like, obviously all these things sort of added up and you went, right, I have to stop, but was it you yourself or were other people sort of giving you like the egg on to stop, or did you really have to sort of go, right, I've had enough?
Well, I was lucky because my parents both don't drink, but they used to drink before I was born.
Okay.
So I didn't grow up like in an alcoholic home, but they're both non-drinkers as a result of drinking too much. So pretty early on, once I was showing symptoms of alcoholism, my mother had no problem telling me that there was a pretty good chance it wasn't going to work out with me and alcohol.
Right.
So she made me paranoid, so once the problems properly started, like once I'd lost a friend or two, once I'd like done things that made me feel quite disgusting for alcohol, I kind of went, wait a minute, I mean, maybe she's right, so it was pretty easy for me to say, it was pretty easy for me to go to an AA meeting at least once and say, let me check this out, and I heard things, when I heard other people that were no longer drinking but used to have a problem, even though I was only 17, 18, I was identifying with way too much stuff, things that I thought were quite normal turned out weren't that normal at all. They were things that only people with a problem experience. But also, obviously, you get that relief of knowing that you're not the only one, that you're not like this kind of, you're not this horrible freak, that it's actually a symptom of the condition that you've developed, So between the two things, realizing, and actually I remember I was in boarding school in Dublin, and this guy came in to speak, as you often get like in a school, a guy comes in to speak and say, I once had a problem with alcohol, I got sober, this is my life. And I went up to him afterwards and I said, dude, like I had stopped drinking on my own, just like I was white knuckling it. And I was like, man, I'm trying not to drink, can you take me to a meeting? And I got permission to leave, even though the priest at the time told me there was no way I could be an alcoholic. But at that meeting, which was in Monkstown in Dublin, this guy came up to me and he was like, man, if I could have got sober when I was your age, I would have stopped so much stuff. And it really landed on me kind of that actually, like there's plenty more I could do, but actually I might be saving myself a lot of hassle if I just gave it up now.
Do you reckon the way your life has gone, obviously over the last 10, 12 years, you've become pretty successful, famous and that, would you have been able to do that if you've been drinking? Or do you...
Well, actually it was a sober guy that got me into comedy.
Really, yeah?
Yeah, it was a guy that I knew from being sober that pushed me towards doing comedy. I didn't do my first gig until I was nearly 2 years sober. It didn't even enter my brain before that. So it's impossible to say, isn't it? Because it's a hypothetical.
Of course,
but I think that I would have screwed it up by now, to be honest. You know, a lot of access to booze and drugs in the comedy game, a lot of late nights, a lot of money, and you know, just like I just don't think I would have made it. You know, I think I would have ended up sober anyway. But I'm glad that I was sober before I started doing comedy, because I would have hated to have associations with my job that were from that life. You know, because comedy to me is a totally sober thing. There's no, because I've seen other comedians, they get a problem, they get successful, they develop a problem, and then they stop, and they struggle with the fact that gigging to them was they had a drink after a gig. You know, they connect with other comedians through alcohol, so they lose all those connections. Whereas for me, the connections were always sober ones.
Great stuff, man. And just like without alcohol, a lot of people I know and I've spoken to, they sort of wonder, well, what can you do instead of going to the pub? And I'm not asking you to tell people how to live their lives, but you've never had a problem filling in the beautiful part of the world and filling in great things to do.
Well, it's easy here. I mean, I'm sure there are people watching in Ireland go, yeah, that's grand for him. Like, look where he's sitting. But I spend most of my time in Ireland, and I spent a good number of those early years sober, like 19 to 25 or 26, before I really started like traveling a lot or anything. So, you know, a good 7 years of, you know, just living in Ireland and being sober. And like, for starters, you've so much more money, so you've a lot more financial freedom, and with that freedom comes the ability to, you know, head away for the weekend, you know, go out for lovely meals, because you're not worried about spending your money on, you know, you spend your money on food, you're not thinking, oh God, that's drinking money, you know. You know, like, naturally I got quite active, you know, into physical fitness. You know, you develop a whole network of people that like to do, like, I love playing squash. I know people think it's kind of like not cool, but yeah, I play a lot of squash.
Never had a problem with squash.
I play a lot of squash. You know, go swim, like I swim in the 40-foot all the time. Like, you know, like, activities definitely made it easier for me. But then after a period of time, like after not that long, you know, when I was still young, I was 19, I was still horny and everything. I still wanted to go out and meet people. You know, I went out dancing all the time. In fact, I dance a lot still. I mean, I just don't have as much energy now. I'm getting a bit older, but I still enjoy a good bop. You know, I like going out and having a good dance. I'm not as if a bunch of my friends are going to have a few drinks in the pub, I'm probably not as inclined to go. But not because I'm worried about wanting to have a drink. That doesn't even enter the equation. I don't have any desire. But you know, sometimes it's just a bit boring because. You know, it's a certain type of thing, and I think it's a good energy for them, but it's not my energy. But I don't miss that. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. But if they're going for a few drinks and then afterwards they're going to go out for a meal, or they're going to go out for, you know, a bit of a bop, or if they're going to a pub that's quite lively, like, I'll go because I like meeting new people and whatever. So, you know, you don't really miss that much. It only seems like you miss a lot because your whole life is drinking. But once you step away from that, you realize that actually, when your whole life is drinking, you're missing out on everything. That's the only thing that you're doing, you know. It's pretty narrow focus, you know.
That's it, man.
And it's kind of like, well, it's really disgusting. Like, you see people, you see Irish, they come over here, and like, I'm not critical of Irish people, but I do think that there's an unhealthy attitude and culture towards drinking, you know. I think it comes from a wounded place, you know. And I see a lot of them, they come here, they're away from home, and they just go crazy. And like, this is one of the more beautiful urban landscapes you'll ever likely to see, Bondi Beach. But you see them on the beach at 3 o'clock in the day, and they're just shattered and they're shaking, and you just think, what are you doing, man? Like, there's so much more to this than every day trying to make a plan and then the next day not being able to do it because you don't get up till 12 or 1 o'clock, and feeling crappy at work. It's just it's a dead life, in my opinion.
That's it, man.
But that's my perception from where I'm coming from. I'm not making a judgment so much on the way people live their lives, but you know, I'm confident enough to say that there's probably more to life than that, but I see people stuck in that cycle, you know.
Beautiful. Right, well, Des, thank you very much for joining me on SoberPaddy.com. On the Sober Paddy, get up out of the pub, the laddies, come on, look up.